Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. It's Wednesday, my favorite day of the week. I love doing my show. I always have the most interesting guests and, in my opinion, the most interesting conversations, but that's just me. And today is no different. I have a really interesting guest, Neurological Life Coach and author GlennSCohen, and Glenn is going to join me here in just a couple of minutes. I just want to say a shout out to all my regulars. I love you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your emails. It means the world to me. If you're tuning in for the first time, I want to say welcome. I hope you keep coming back, just to let you know that the show is recorded live. And if you like the show and you want to listen to other shows, you can do that at any time, because we put the show up on my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com, under podcasts, and Owen Times Radio also puts all the shows up in their archives, so you can listen to any show at any time you like. And I hope you go back and listen to some other shows and tell your friends. Just a little bit about me. I'm an artist, I'm a photographer, I'm an author. I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And I talk all about manifesting. I photographed all the images in the book, and people sent me a manifesting postcard, which is sort of like a mini vision board, and I would photograph it, and when their manifestation became the reality, I shared their stories. So there's 30 of those in the book, and I have lots of writing exercises and fun manifesting games to manifest in areas of love and health and career and abundance. And, you know, when we get to talking to my guest today, there's a lot of reasons why we have issues manifesting those things that we want, or we say we want. Instead, we're usually manifesting a lot of the things we don't want. And Glenn is going to really help us understand why that happens when we look at our lives. And that's why he's a neurological life coach, because there's a lot of stuff going on underneath that we don't really realize. And once we do, and we can shift and correct those things and look at ourselves more deeply, it opens the door to be able to manifest the abundance in all those areas that we want. We always want more abundance in our life, right? More love, more money, better health, better relationships. So it's really interesting. And just so that you guys know, each week I share what I call a magical message, which is a postcard I received. I photograph it, and there's always an affirmation that goes along with the postcard. And this week's is, I built a community of love. And we all want to do that, right? We all want to build our individual communities surrounded by love. And you can find all of those. I post them each week across all my social medias. And I started doing live readings from my book, which you can also follow along on the social media. They're like 5-minute clips. I decided I wanted to read the book online. It's coming up on 5 years in November. I can't even believe it. And I rephotographed the postcards in the book, and I'm reading the stories. So I really hope that you join me. And if you're there, say hi. Let me know that you stopped by. And I have a couple of workshops I do. I'm not going to get into it because I really want to talk to Glenn, but you can find out about those on postcardstotheuniverse.com, and I hope that I see you there too. All right, let me get to my guest, because it's really some interesting stuff here. So GlennSCohen, he's a Master Neurological Life Coach, and he's the founder of the Center for Neurological Intelligence. And he's helped thousands of individuals and couples by guiding them to heal their unresolved neurological wounding. We all have wounds, right? Cohen has authored 2 groundbreaking books that present his practical learnings into a step-by-step process to gain neurological intelligence and master your inner worlds. Neurological Intelligence Volume 1, an owner's manual for the human operating system, And Neurological Intelligence Volume 2, Strategies and Tools to Heal and Grow, are new and practical approaches, tapping into human consciousness to heal the human system. Gaining neurological intelligence begins with how our nervous systems are formed and programmed, and why it operates on repeating patterns that often cause us to experience disconnection, pain, and suffering. This begins with what Cohen calls the reclaiming journey. As readers take these steps, they will have a better understanding of how their inner worlds work through the thoughts and behaviors they discover in themselves. They will learn new tools and practice innovative techniques to gain clarity and flexibility in order to grow into the next highest version of themselves. So if you want to if you want to learn more, which I highly recommend you do, because in the last week, I've been going through the books. So they're really, like I said, super interesting. And I've gotten a lot of aha moments. Go to I'm going to spell it out for you since we're on radio, www.center, CENTR, forni.com. Welcome, Glenn. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Melissa.
Oh, this is really... It's so interesting because what I do is I'm on the fun end of it, right? I'm on the end, like after you've done the work and you want to manifest and it's fun. And like I put magic and, we sprinkle stardust, we send them to the universe and all that stuff about what people want to manifest. What people don't realize is that we're always attracting back into us, right, where we are. And a lot of people don't realize there's so much subconscious programming running that's blocking those beautiful things that we want because we have unresolved emotions that we're still holding on to from our childhood. So with saying that, I'm going to let you share with us how you got into this work and what facilitated you wanting to write the books.
Well, it really began in my childhood. I went through a lot of neurological wounding in childhood, adolescence, and through my adult life. And beginning around 1998 through 2002, the universe kept trying to wake me up all the decades before, but of course I wasn't listening. So it made sure I paid attention by sending me down into a dark night of the soul extended time period. And it was through all that pain and suffering that in July of 2003, for some reason, I went to Barnes & Noble's and was looking through the self-help section, and I found Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I read it, and while I was reading it, it came to me what my life purpose was. So throughout that whole multiple years of suffering, there was a voice inside of me that kept saying, this is all happening for a reason. Keep going. You'll know why. And I kept hearing it. And when I read that book, it came to me that all the pain and suffering I have been through was to learn all I could from all the masters out there to heal myself, but also to find a way to effectively help others through that process. And so it took quite a while, but I just studied everybody I could, and I started cherry picking what I felt was relevant. And through the years of working with all these people, adding stuff, deleting stuff, and then I got these whiteboards and I started drawing it all out. And then in July of 2020, another voice came to me and said, "You're done. Start writing." And that's when I started.
Wow. No, it's really, and I love that you give us writing exercises and practical tools in the books, like, so that we can really get clear on what our neurological wounds may be. And can you just share with people listening, like, what do you mean when you say a neurological wound?
So a neurological wound is really a memory that at the time of the incident, it could be a moment or it could be a period of time where you're not able to express your emotions. You are not able to reprocess it in an empowered way because it became disempowered, and you weren't able to reintegrate back into your nervous system in a healthy, functional way. So when we get overwhelmed, it could metaphorically fracture the nervous system, and it becomes an implicit memory that does not integrate with explicit memory. And inside that memory are the perceptions, emotions, the beliefs, and body sensations and muscle movement inherent in that memory. And it's unconscious. And it's just floating around in space, in the universe, inside of our system. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, we have an experience, a perception of an experience, and it brings that right back to the present moment. And we don't know it's from the past. And we think it's right then and there. So relating it to the manifesting is like, if you have a disempowered belief that is still part of your deeper programming inside your human operating system, it's going to be challenging to actually get what you want, because really the belief is focused on what you don't want, not what you do want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I talk about that a lot. And I talk about that in the book too, that you can, you can say as many affirmations as you want. I talk about affirmations a lot. You can make as many posts, you can make a postcard a day for 10 years. But if you don't believe you deserve, you feel unworthy, or you're not lovable, or you don't deserve it, it's not coming. Doesn't matter, right? So we have to change those beliefs. And that's the deep inner work that you call us to take action, to look inward. And you talk a lot about that in the book, about how it usually comes from mostly comes from relationships, right? Like
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be romantic, but very often romantic relationships will trigger our emotional wounds, and the emotional wounds happen when we're children, and we don't have the emotional intelligence to process it, right? A lot of them.
Yeah, and I don't use the term emotional wounds because it limits it. Neurological wounds encompass emotions, but also how you made sense of things, the beliefs and the meanings you assign. So that's why I use that term, neurological wounding, because it encompasses more than just the emotions. It's how you perceive it, made sense of it in the first nanosecond, that sensory data, because we really are sensory data machines. And that's where my belief is affirmations are great, but if you don't use the tools we have inside for how the unconscious mind really communicates, which is sensory data, which are nonverbal cues, and if you add the sensory data component to the affirmation, it's like, jet fuel. It's putting it on steroids.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense, right? Because you even say that, two people can be raised in the same family and have come out and experiencing things very differently. Two people can have the same thing happen to them, and neurologically, one person carries that wound for the rest of their life until far into adulthood, and it affects the relationships, and the other person processes it but doesn't carry it into their adulthood. So there's a lot of components there and reasons why that is, which you go into great detail with us in your books. So so this would be the easiest way to ask it. How do we know, for the adults that are listening, that we have a neurological wound? What would our life kind of be showing us to give us an indication that that's happening?
Probably the best way of knowing that is, do you ever get triggered where your nervous system activates, your body, you feel so uncomfortable, and the next day you look back on it and you go, why did I feel that way? What was, and the intimate love relationships is the number one trigger. Your children are the second biggest trigger. So wherever you're most vulnerable is where those wounds can be triggered. So I like to say in the book, it's like when we get triggered above a certain level, we start acting like a child or reptile. And we shift into a different personality in order to protect the wounded aspect of self.
Right. So before the show, I asked Glenn if he would be willing, and he said yes, to use me, since I'm your host, as an example to help people understand, what we're talking about. So is that all right, Glenn, if I kind of share a little bit of my backstory with you?
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I'm the oldest of three. I come from a Italian family, a big extended family, Italian family. My parents been married over 50 years, very emotional, very codependent, very loud, very passionate, very loving. When the fights are big, they're big, but the love is big. My mom had me when she was very young. By the time she was 23, she had me and my sister. My sister was born developmentally disabled. She also had health issues when she was a baby. She had to have open heart surgery at a year old. And when she grew up, she had a lot of behaviors and a lot of acting out and stuff. My youngest sister was born. She was born many years after. Well, like we're 10 years apart, so she was born 10 years after me because my mom wasn't going to have any more children because of my sister Tony. So my whole life was chaos, 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 putting out fires, chaos. Lots of love, but always something, right? And 2 years ago, my sister Tony, the one who was disabled, passed away. The year before that, she had a choking accident and she had a trach for a year. Now she passed away. My parents have been grieving. My parents, thankfully, are still alive. My youngest sister and my brother-in-law, they extended on my parents' house. Everybody lives together. I'm with them on the weekends. A lot. We're together a lot. And I have always been the child. My mom said I was born a little adult. I was really smart, very independent from being a child. And I am the kind of person that if I run toward, like a fight or flight, I'm fight. I run toward chaos to help, to take, you know what I mean? Because I was the oldest and I was always helping. And my sister, there was a lot of stuff that happened, which I wouldn't go into detail because it would be hours with my sister Tony. And now, as an adult, many years later, we've established strong boundaries. I have created my own space as my little sanctuary. Oh, but just to backtrack to that. So any relationship that I brought into my life, the men that I brought into my life, I was the one that took care of them emotionally, right? Because I'm the one that takes care of everybody emotionally. I was a little adult. I was an adult at 3 when my sister was born. So I see the patterns. I see why I attracted the relationships. I see what happened. And I learned how to take care of myself, my own emotional needs. And when I would ask my partners to help me, that's when they would shut down. So I would attract an avoidant and they would shut down. And then I would go, well, now I got to take care of my own needs, right? It's always been that way. So I'm aware of it. I've been working on all of that stuff. And I've established great boundaries. My parents, I'm very open with my feelings, they know. And I never wanted to put anything on my parents because they always had so much to deal with. But now as an adult, I noticed, now that I have my little sanctuary created and I've done a lot of healing work, that when my family calls me or texts me, I get a tightness in my sternum, like between my heart and my stomach, because my first thought is, what do they need? And that's where I'm at now. Even though I've done so much healing work and so much forgiveness work, but that's my first triggered response because it's usually them asking me for something. They need something. Can I help? Mm-hmm. And it happens with my sister too, my youngest sister. But I don't do that to them very often. I don't. So, all right, now go ahead. Tell me. Tell me, what would you say? I'm your client and this is where I'm at.
Well, you just gave me a plateful. If you really look at neurological wounding, there's two components. Really, there's two components, the energy and the information. So we break it down simplistically. The majority is energy. So there are three states of being, which are chaos on one end of the spectrum, rigidity on the other, and flexibility in the middle. So it seems like you grew up in a very household with a lot of chaos energy.
Yes.
So people who do that can go one of two ways. And what it sounds like the direction you went is to manage and control your environment in order to keep your inner world comfortable.
Yes.
So when the unconscious mind feels uncomfortable, it always wants to get back to comfort, and then it devises strategies in order to get there. So my guess is that a lot of that chaos energy you internalize because, come on, you can't make waves. You're there to take care of everybody and make everything better. So that energy got stuck in your sternum. So it becomes a hyper-vigilant alarm system.
Yeah.
So that energy really is not about today. It has nothing to do with your parents or your family. It's the memory of what those little girls went through that is still stuck in implicit memory that gets triggered and comes back into your awareness without you knowing about it. Because you don't retrieve implicit memory, it retrieves you. So when the second you see a text or get a call, immediately you get that body sensation. That is your early warning alarm system for you to go inside and notice those little girls and then create a secure attachment bond with them. Because I'd imagine it would be difficult for you to have gone through that chaos, and particularly having a younger sister with a disability and your parents, God bless them, they didn't know what to do. You know, they were probably activated themselves. She needed a lot of attention. So when you look at the primal attachment needs of safety, certainty, and trust, those were probably threatened by you from your unconscious mind. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined. That's irrelevant. It's whatever you perceive. That's all that matters. And one of the biggest evaluators of these wounds, particularly in childhood and adult life, is can someone answer the primary attachment question with a yes? And that question is, are you there for me the way I need you when I need you the most? And I would assume with everything going on with your parents, you would not have been able to answer that a lot of times during that time, which would activate the nervous system.
That's true. Yeah. Sure.
So it's a reconnection to self to allow yourself to sit with that activation, breathe it out, and then ask some curious questions to go inside. And it's called reclaiming self and really connect with those little girls. And I usually do it in a meditation form where people close their eyes and go inside. And we use the neurological instruments, active imagination, sensory data, to help release and reprocess the experiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you would walk a client through a meditation where I would are you talking me through? Would you be talking me or the client through the meditation, asking them to go back to a certain time when they could, that they felt that they were triggered, where the original wound happened? Is that how the process that you do?
Yeah. So I call, as you read the book, you can know I'm a severe acronym junkie. So I call them SIMI. Strategic, intentional, meditative experience. So it's very I call it neurological surgery. It's very strategic, and it's a multi-step process where we identify some of the more encompassing nubs. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a specific time, a moment in time. It could be a 1-2 year time period.
Yeah.
And then leading my clients through a very strategic process in a meditation where they drop downstairs. Because if your brain is trying to analyze, logicalize, or rationalize, you can't get there. So you have to shut up upstairs and go downstairs. And the quote I use is, you have to let go of the present in order to let go of the past.
Right. Well, it makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily know it, because I wasn't even 3 yet when my sister Tony was born. And I imagine my 23-year-old mother, my 28-year-old father being so young themselves, having 2 children, the fear that they must have felt. And then my sister having health issues and having to have surgery. She was born with a hole in one of the arteries to her heart. I must have absorbed that energy. Now, of course, I don't remember that. I don't have a conscious memory of that. Yeah, I'm not going to. So I must have absorbed their energy. I mean, I think of what I was like in my 20s, and the thought of having having to deal with that, is just incredible. So yes, it makes sense that then, anybody who's listening, we're going to be coming up to a break here in just a minute, and we'll talk more. Think about something that keeps showing up in your life. And if you can consciously think of maybe somewhere in your childhood where you were wounded, or, were 5 years old, something happened, maybe there was abuse, anything. And maybe that is what is causing the issues that you're having right now in your life, especially in your relationships. So think about that. Let's take our break now. And then Glenn, you and I will talk more when we come back. All right, everybody, stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Everyone has a story. I have a story. You have a story. We all have a story. As I see it, you have 3 choices. Allow your story to define you, use it to excuse you, or utilize it as a method to empower you. It's your life. You have the power. You choose. Rewrite your story on finduniquelyyou.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. If you're just joining me, I have Neurological Life Coach and author GlennSCohen on as my guest, and we're talking basically from his the work that he does and his 2 books that I just finished this week, which are pretty amazing. And we were sharing a little bit of my family dynamic as an example. So you talk about in your book and I thought this was really, really interesting. You called it the color. You say what, empowerment or disempowerment? What's the color of your rainbow? So we all have that running in our psyches, in our minds. So what do you mean by that?
So if you are, let's say, 80% not wounded, 20% wounded, that 80% not wounded is going to process sensory data in the present moment more from an empowered place.
Okay.
So when we look at our human operating system, as sensory data comes in, the very first filter that sensory data goes through are what I call references. And references are single words: good, bad, win, lose, safe, danger, fair, unfair, where our perception, we're going to look back and through our entire database to see if something is uniquely similar. And if so, whether it's green or red, we're going to take that and then build that for how we make sense of our perception, which arrives at the meaning we assign, which evokes the emotion we feel.
Okay.
So if you are assigning, you'll know if it's a disempowered meaning by your emotions.
Right. Right. Like it shows up red. Like it doesn't last. It just shows up there for an instant and then it'll be fine and then it goes, but there's still some stuff there that obviously I need to reclaim.
Yeah, like when you read that text and you feel that energy in your sternum, you obviously have assigned a disempowered meaning to you receiving that text.
Right. Exactly. Because I've done so much inner work over the last, at least 5 years, that I've healed so many things. And there's no resentment. I don't have any resentment. It's not that I'm carrying any of that, but there still is something that's disempowering. Obviously, my body's telling me that, right? So there's more work for me to do. And I always believe that we're a work in progress, right? We're always working to heal ourselves. So whatever's going on in your body, wouldn't you find that be a good indicator to let you know something's going on if you have something showing up in your body?
Yes, but I'll qualify that by saying, so another one of my acronyms is the NSI, Nervous System Index 0 to 10. Okay. So if the intensity of that sensation is a 2-3, you know what? Welcome to the human race. That's just being human. We all get triggered. It's fine.
Right.
But if it gets up to around 5, and particularly when we cross 6, when you cross 6 is when you hit the brainstem, fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
And that's when you have a challenge managing your inner world. So I go by the law of 80-20 that we strive for 100, we're grateful for 80, and we're always going to try to manage that in between 20. Because we're always going to be imperfect. There's no such thing as total healing if this doesn't happen.
Right.
But if we can decrease the sensitivity of the wound, so it's when you get triggered, it's a 2-3. You know what? Great. That's about the best you can do.
Yeah. You said something interesting in your book, and you said that if we are triggered, let's say a 6 and above. There may be something in us that we don't want to look at, like when we if something happens and we always blame the other person, right? Oh, they're this way, they did that. They're a bully, they're mean, they're this. And we're super triggered. You ask us to look at ourselves, right? Is that true that we always are carrying something if we're that triggered about it?
Well, Not always, because nothing is always. Now, if somebody's
But,
chasing you with a
well, yeah,
12-inch knife
obviously.
around the house, then it's okay to go above a 6. So everything,
Obviously.
right, it's all about, if the
Yeah.
content fits the context, then great, right? But
Right.
that's
Right.
very rare that reality matches your reactivity. So the
Right.
vast majority of the time, going above a 6 is usually about yourself.
Right.
And it's the
Right.
doorway for you to explore. And then once you cross 6, that's when your pods, your personalities of offensive and defensive strategies come out to protect. And then we start acting like somebody else. And if we're adult and in a relationship, then the partner goes, "Who are you? What happened to you?"
Yeah. Yes, that is very true. And the
And then
pods
what
are
we end up
what
doing,
you claimed, right? I mean, that you wrote about, right? In the sense that you tell us
yeah.
like the characteristics of the different pods. I mean, there could be more than one, but you give us a nice breakdown of the pods in the book.
And that's a collection over the years that have
Mhm.
the common ones. There's so many
Mhm.
more that people can just label themselves. But when we
Right.
look at the inner world, there's 3 aspects. We have the unresolved little ones. I call them nubs,
Mm.
neurological
Okay.
unresolved bundles. And we have our pods
Uh-huh.
that protect them.
Uh-huh.
But then we have the highest self, I call Mel, the mindful empowered
Right.
leader. And it's so important to really to associate that part of us in order to do the healing work.
Mm. Yes. So, and I thought I love this chapters, the sensory programming model. Are you mindful of your mind? Because I don't think most of us are mindful of our mind. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it is said that we have 70,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are the
Mm.
same as yesterday. So if
Okay.
you are running a pattern where a lot of those words really are red, disempowered,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're almost on autopilot. So your software has not been updated. If we look at our
Yeah.
phones and our computers, we update
Right.
them all the time. But has
Right.
anybody really looked at the software of their unconscious mind to update it and take out any viruses that could be hampering how we make sense of things in the present moment based off of whatever beliefs are associated and become filters for it? So to be
Yeah.
mindful of your mind is really looking at yourself and going, I keep it simple. So you can always ask yourself a very simple question. Is this serving me or causing me to suffer in some way?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
If
really
it's
simple
serving you,
question.
great, keep it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really that simple. Because we don't, and I'm sure you have because you see you take clients and you see people coming to you with issues, but those people that are always complaining, right? They always have a problem. Wherever they go, whoever they run into, whatever they do, there's always an issue, there's always a problem. And so usually I will say to that person, if I trust they have enough trust in me and trust in them, who is the common denominator in this situation, right? You are. So maybe what's going on, And I don't think many people, and I'm noticing more and more people are starting to look in the mirror at themselves and ask themselves these questions. Are you finding that over the years of you doing this work, that more people are open to this now?
Yes, without a doubt. And people that run that particular pattern is very common.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, in our adult lives, the 2 primary attachment needs are significance and connection. So if
Okay.
somebody is going around telling a very significant story that
Mhm.
places them in a victim role, and then other people are listening, they're getting those needs met, but it's not serving them, it's causing them to suffer. It's a very common pattern.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I remember reading that and I thought, that really makes sense. Yes, because in some way it is serving them, right? They're getting a connection with somebody else, even though it's just that they're complaining, complaining, and complaining. I
Yeah, they're
want you
just
to
getting
share
their needs met in a disempowered way.
in a disempowered way. Yeah. Talk a little bit about attachment styles, because that is a word that many people don't really understand, that we all have attachment styles, the way we attach to other people. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So attachment theory is really about, it begins at the first 18 months of life.
Right.
That's the first stage of development of a child's life. Half the population approximately comes out with a secure attachment where their nervous system, they're able to manage their nervous system. So when they get dysregulated, they can re-soothe themselves.
Okay.
Other half of the population is insecure attachment, and there's three variations. One is anxious, the other one's avoidant, and the other one's disorganized, who bounces back and forth between anxious and avoidant. So interestingly, when you get into adult life and an insecure attachment is still within you, you usually find somebody with an opposite style of insecure attachment to hook up with.
Yeah.
And so the journey, the real journey of being mindful of the mind is, what is the attachment style you have with yourself as an adult? Do you have a secure attachment with yourself? And that's really a key question for people, where can you manage your inner world that when you get triggered, you can come back down pretty quickly. You can self-soothe and evaluate how you got there and own your inner world and not point your finger outward, but point it at yourself.
Yeah. Now, do you know, well, now you probably, I'm sure you do know, what was your attachment style before you have done all this work on yourself? Where were you at?
I was disorganized attachment. I would be anxious in one situation, avoid it in the other, and I was like a pinball machine going back and forth.
And did you attract other romantic relationships where the opposite of that?
Absolutely.
Is that, yeah.
Oh,
I
yes.
noticed.
I was put to the ringer.
I noticed that happens a lot. Like if you're very codependent and you have abandonment issues, you will attract a person who is avoidant so that you can heal that, right? Isn't that why we're coming together? It's to bring these things up so that we can heal these neurological wounds.
Yeah, which is interestingly the main focus of Volume 3, which will come out later this summer, which is for couples and a guide to emotionally loving relationships. And the first third of the book talks about the imago attachment complex for why we unconsciously seek out the partners we want. And one of the quotes from it is, the primary purpose for our committed love relationships is to find somebody who'll piss us off the most. So we need to be challenged, right? We have to be challenged in order to grow. So we find somebody after a period of time when the attachment bond sets, the unconscious mind looks at that person and goes, oh, there you are. And now this person has a magical poker who can poke our patterns and make them come alive, because we have to bring the unconscious conscious before we can work with it. And that's really one of the primary goals for committed love relationships.
That's really interesting. So in your professional opinion, now obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, do you believe that many people, if they were aware of this kind of work and would be willing to look at themselves as each, in a couple, but each person looking out for themselves and working with someone like you, avoid divorce? Because now we're at what?
I'm
over
sure
50% now divorce?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely
Go
think
ahead.
it can. And so the way I like to explain it, particularly when people come in to interview me before they decide whether to move forward with the process, is I look at them, I go, okay, here's the deal. There's 3 entities that I'm coaching right now, 2 I's and a we. The I's have to know what's going on before you focus on the we, right? Because who are the players in the game? And if one of the I's is showing up in a disempowered way and pointing a finger outward the whole time and blaming the other person, you're not going to make much headway with the we. Both fingers have got to be
Right.
pointing at themselves and work on that I to give the we the greatest chance of success to achieve the goal that they want. And that's why
Yeah.
volume 1 and 2, 1 is the education,
Mm-hmm.
2 is the application, and 3 is for couples. So that's why I put it out that way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. See when book 3 comes out. Yeah, I remember when I was 16, my grandmother said to me one time, and I was in love with my first love, high school, and I remember her saying, we were talking about relationships, that love isn't enough. And she wasn't saying it like to me, like, at that time, we were just talking about relationships. And she's like, yeah, love just isn't always enough. And I remember thinking, what is she, crazy? Because I was so young at the time. But now, being an adult and having past relationships, I understand what she means, because you can still love somebody. But if all your neurological wounds are coming out and you're looking at it completely by blaming the other person, then the relationship can't sustain itself unless you
No,
do the
blow
work.
up.
Yeah, it'll blow up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some way,
Wow.
shape, or form. It's just, then you get that, the little gaps in the relationship become crevasses that they just lose hope. They lose all hope.
Right.
And, and then the biggest part is when one partner loses respect for the other one because of their choices, that usually signals the end.
Yeah. And you find what'll usually happen is if the relationship ends and they don't realize their part in it, they'll just attract somebody else and they'll repeat the pattern.
Absolutely. See it all the time.
Yeah.
And I warn them. I say, hey, I'm not here to tell you what to do. That's not my job. But I'm going to warn you that if you don't do the work, you will more than probably repeat the pattern in some way, shape, or form. And a couple years down the road, you're going to say, oh, my gosh, I'm in the same situation.
Yeah.
Just a different person.
Just a different person. Right. Now,
'Cause
why do you think it's so hard for us people to really look at ourselves and take accountability?
that's a great question. I think in today's world, even though we have all this information, if you really step back and look at it from 15,000 feet, people put so much time, energy, and attention to their external world and not to their internal world. They're so busy managing the external world in their lives that they just don't take the time. And I think the information if this information can get to children like middle school, early high school, where at least they have the awareness of their inner world, we have a better chance of reprogramming the system at an earlier age. Because you remember, as what version of iOS is on your phone? 15. How many people have updated their software 15 times?
Right.
So if we could start earlier, we could start impacting that software so it's green at a deeper level, which is the part that gets filtered with sensory data. So we have a greater chance of having more empowerment than disempowerment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's easier to blame others than look inside yourself. It really is.
Oh my gosh, totally
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. It
We don't have
just
to do any
really is.
work. We just blame everybody
That.
else, People love,
Yes.
the victim mentality is huge.
Yes, it is. I'm glad you said that, because that is something that I see a lot, and I've been there myself. So I know, and getting myself out of victimhood took a lot of work, and I had to take a lot of accountability for what I was, I use the term manifesting in my life from where I was at in my, external, in my relationships. And now looking back, I see it as clear as day. But obviously when I was in it, I wasn't seeing it, right? And it took a lot of work, and it's not easy, but it's worth it. I mean, I can imagine when your clients are have finished working with you and they move on with their life, what a difference from when they how they were when they walked in.
The majority, the ones who actually do the work, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
there's tons of testimonials on my website. And it's really interesting is when I'm working with couples, particularly in the first session after they move forward, I'll say, okay, I want to let you know that I am a finger bender. And if you are sharing a story where your finger is pointing toward the other, I'm going to bend it back at yourself. So I will interrupt them and say, rephrase that and only speak of self. Because you have to, it's almost like teaching them a new language and a new way of doing things to really look inside, because most of the time it's on autopilot. They don't even know they're doing it. It's just so automatic because it's protective, and we're built to protect ourselves. And that's the primary directive of the unconscious mind, is to preserve and protect the body. So it's the first strategy we go to.
Yeah, and I imagine many people, if you're in a long-term relationship, you build patterns, right? There's a pattern, there's a dynamic in the relationship that's been so established and dysfunctional and painful, but they're used to it, right? So it's hard for them to switch that mind frame where, I can't blame you for all the things that I say you're terrible for doing anymore. Right? You have to oh no, but why is this triggering me? Like, you use something very simple, like somebody leaving the milk out on the counter, right? Like that, and that's so triggering. Like, you have to ask yourself, why are you that triggered about that?
Yeah, so that is the question that I help couples with, and it's in volume 2 in the M&M technique, is the challenge question. So, like when you see a text and you feel that energy come alive in your sternum, the question is, what would I have to believe in order to feel this way? And then you put it through the TFQ filter. Well, is that true, false, or questionable? And the vast majority of the time, it's false. And that's how you can find your disempowered beliefs.
Yeah, it's true, because the vast majority of the time it is false. So
why
you're
would you
right
get triggered
about
over
that.
a text?
Right, because I'm waiting for what fire has developed and that I have to help put out. That's because that was my whole childhood. You know what I mean? So there was always a fire. Something was happening, always. And there's
Chaos.
still very much chaos. There's still very much of that energy. I'm not even going to try to change my family. I love my family.
No.
They're very loving. It's not about that. So I've learned I need to change me, the way I deal with it, the way I process it, and letting certain things go, and I have, but I do notice there's a physical component. So that's telling me, because I listen to my body very much now, something's still there. We need to go deeper.
Yeah.
Got to go a little deeper.
Yeah. And, Bessel van der Kelt's famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's so aptly titled for his book. And it all stores in the body. And that's the first indicator that, we have some work to do, depending on the intensity of that. If it hijacks your system and it causes you to fight, flight, freeze, well, there's some serious work to be done. But if it's just a little drift in it, but, being kind to self and not blaming others, and really just understanding the origin and making friends with it and saying, wow, I get you. I hear you. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that's self-soothing.
Yeah, and that's self-soothing. Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of I have a lot of self-soothing things that I do now, which I just love my self-soothing rituals. So Glenn, we only have a couple of minutes. Is there something really important that you want to say? Because I want to give you that opportunity.
Well, number one is thanking you for inviting me on your show and for sharing, some of your story and allowing that to be used to explore the topics we did. I would say the number one thing is really pay attention to your inner world. It's guiding you to heal whatever is unresolved. And when you do that and grow into the next highest version of yourself, you get to a place where I call neurological freedom, where the outside world doesn't trigger you above a 2-3, and you can be at peace inside the vast majority of the time. And that is achievable.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we would all like that. Are you still taking on clients if somebody hears this and wants to see you, or do you take new clients, or are you just doing
Yes,
like
I
lectures
do.
now in your book? Oh, good. Okay.
No, I do still see clients. I love seeing clients, doing workshops, speeches, so forth, podcasts. But yeah,
Wonderful.
they can reach me off the website on the request initial interview page.
Okay. And what's your website again? Just let everybody know.
Sure. It's www.center, CenterForni.com.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for writing your books. I'm looking forward to your third one about relationships because I got a lot out of it. So check them out, guys. All right, everybody. As always, thanks so much for being here with me on Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.